On September 11th, 2001, I was 2 years old. And that evening, my family watched as the horrific tragedy unfolded. My parents recall that at one point on that terrible day, an image appeared on our TV screen. And my 2-year-old self was amazed to see my father on the nightly news. I tugged on my father's sleeve, pointed at the screen, and shouted, "Papa, Papa." The image on the screen that night was not my father. It was Osama bin Laden. My father tells me that this was a moment of profound fear. He was afraid that Americans would, as I had innocently done, see my father's beard and turban and think, terrorist. Now, the religion my family practices is called Sikhism. As Sikhs, we believe in keeping our hair uncut and covered under a turban in reference to one of God's greatest gifts. Our commitment to cover our long hair reflects the determination of our ancestors who fought to build a unique Sikh identity. But the attacks on September 11 opened Sikhs like my father to suspicion and danger. As I grew older, friends would pull my parents aside, warning them of the social implications of raising a Sikh child in the United States. Close family members considered removing my turban and cutting off my long hair in order to avoid any bullying or discrimination I would encounter at school. But my father refused to shed my identity. Because he would always tell me, "JJ, as Sikhs, we are rare ones. And if we don't stand up for our beliefs, we will go extinct." So throughout my elementary school years, my father encouraged me to stand up and speak up for my beliefs. I was so excited to wear my turban to school each and every day that I even started a YouTube channel. 21 survival tips you can use with the turban. Tip number 5. A turban, which is 18 feet long, by the way, can save a damsel in distress from the towering inferno. Tip number 10. Who needs Bluetooth when you've got a turban? Or how could I forget tip number 21? Do you have a bad hair day? Or just receding hairlines? Have no fear, because a turban is near. But the fun doesn't stop there. My dad and I would even go to Jordan Creek Elementary and would have a presentation every once in a while called Turban Time, where my fellow peers would have a turban tied on them so that they could look like JJ for a day. Throughout my childhood, wearing a turban, being different, was pure awesomeness. But fast forward to August 5th, 2012. I was 12 years old. And that Sunday morning, I sat down with my family at our Sikh temple in West Des Moines. I remember sitting on freshly washed sheets, my eyes closed in meditation, absorbing the warm melody of our harmonium and the rhythmic beat of our drums. But suddenly, our peaceful Sunday service was disrupted by a commotion outside. Several TV news stations lined the entrance of our temple. A reporter's announcement shook our congregation. Only 20 minutes earlier, in a Sikh temple in Oak Creek, Wisconsin, 6 people had been killed doing exactly what we were doing: praying and celebrating our faith. But what the reporter said next, I will never forget. Can you please explain your faith to our viewers? And you know what? That question was a good one. It was fair and it was reasonable. But what haunts me about that question to this day is this: would they have taken the time to ask us to explain our faith, my faith, if 6 people had not been shot dead 300 miles away? I will never know the answer. But what I do know is that in the days that followed, I realized something else. How little I and my community knew about other faiths. From that moment forward, we vowed that we were not going to wait for another tragedy to befall on our local church, synagogue, or mosque to learn about their beliefs. It was time to change the headlines from hate to healing. We needed to take control of the narrative. So the following Sunday, I sat down with a group of Sikh youth at my temple, and I talked with them, obviously over some curry. But I asked them all one question: do any of you ever feel different? And for what seemed like an eternity, no one said a word. But eventually, my friend Sandeep, who was attending Valley High School at the time, spoke up. The people on my bus, when I go home from school, always tug on my turban. Upon hearing this, Rasleen, a girl attending Waukee High School at the time, added to the discussion. The girls at school always make fun of my split ends. They don't realize that because of my faith, I'm not allowed to cut my hair. From these conversations, I learned that being different was not pure awesomeness. Many of my friends were questioning their identity, and some even wanted to just walk away from our faith. For the first time in my life, I felt cognizant of my own privilege. Although I wore my turban with pride to school each and every day, I realized that the world around me did not view my faith through the same happy emoji lens as I did. I was blessed. No one tugged on my turban on the bus ride home. No one made fun of my split ends. Moving forward, I not only wanted to raise awareness for our Sikh community, but I also wanted to raise the confidence of our Sikh youth. So, my friends and I put our turbans together and made spreading the peaceful and altruistic ideals of Sikhism in Des Moines our mission. The Turbanators were born. A youth organization focused on turbanating, the negative stigma surrounding Sikhism through awareness building and community service. For our first event, we planned on hosting an evening of enlightenment at our Sikh temple in West Des Moines, filled with musical performances, an awareness presentation, and a community meal. To our surprise, more than 100 guests, consisting of police officers, state legislators, and educators, joined their Sikh neighbors for our evening of enlightenment. As the evening progressed, I witnessed the unabating spirit of Chardi Kala, or the Sikh concept of relentless optimism in the face of hardship come alive. Young Sikhs stood tall at the podium, confidently explaining the tenets of their faith. Elder Sikhs sat side by side their Iowan neighbors over a steaming bowl of lentil soup. As I poured hot chai tea for our friends that evening, I saw something on their faces. Not fear, hate, or mistrust, but understanding. We were telling our story, and they were listening. My experiences founding the Turbanators altered my perspective about life's interconnectedness. Just like the musical hymns I listened to the morning of the Oak Creek shooting, I experienced a similar rhythm at our evening of enlightenment that went beyond music. As humans, we all resonate at different frequencies, but our vibrations begin to synchronize from the collective energy of coming together as one. For one evening, sitting side by side on one ground, we came to embrace the overwhelming similarities that bind us together, rather than dwelling on those differences that threaten to tear us apart. Now, although our evening of enlightenment has come to an end, the Turbanators have only just begun their journey. To paraphrase the namesake of our organization, Arnold Schwarzenegger, we'll be back. Thank you.